What is up, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of Father Dynasty. I'm your fatherly host, Chew, here in the manhole, here to talk a little fatherhood, fantasy football, and everything in between. And with me today is a very special guest. He has cracked the code when it comes to early Twitter office etiquette. All you need is a cup of coffee and tweet out one word. Morning. Follow him on Twitter at ForWhomJBillTolls and check out his Devy, college, and fantasy football content over at Football Guys and the Devy Royale. Jeff Bell. Jeff, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here. Great to talk about football on a Monday night in April. But, I think we're all ready to go. We're at the point of being ready for the NFL draft. And we've still got a couple more weeks before that is here. But I think we're all chomping at the bit and pretty antsy about where we're going to get some landing spots and draft capital and all that good stuff. So we can step into our dynasty drafts and feel really good about those rookies.
Absolutely. And yeah, just thinking of that kind of zone between, all right, well, we're dealing with some pro days and some visits and who's visiting who. And, it's a lot of excitement, a lot of confusion, a lot of smoke screens, I'm sure, for a lot of those teams. So excited to see some things shake out. Myself as a Panthers fan, I'm very excited to see where the money ends up. I think as of today, it changed to where it's going to be Bryce Young. But we'll see how that shakes out. If we get a quarterback who's capable and can lead us to the playoffs at least, then I really don't care who it is.
Yeah, it came in pretty heavily in Bryce Young's direction. And I don't know. I think April is misinformation season. I think that I am of the mindset that a lot of what you hear early is what you should be listening to. And then as it gets closer to April, there's a lot of smoke going around. And so I think it's a good time for a lot of people to unplug, because I feel like there's a lot of tension and a lot of nervous feelings about some of the assessments that we've done as fantasy analysts and as dynasty analysts, how that plays out. And I think there's always feelings wrapped up in that. And it's a good time to touch some grass too, I think.
Absolutely. So we'll just get a nice little warm up here. I've got a keep, trade, cut for you. So are you ready?
Yeah, always. Definitely.
Let's do it. So keep, trade, cut, of course, a famous or maybe infamous fantasy tool for many. What we've got here is every guest gets their own unique 2 topics for keep, trade, cut. Keep, of course, being ranked first or like the best, cut third or like the least, and trade being second, of course. And the first one here is dad thoughts. And Jeff, first of all, love following you on Twitter. That'll be just the general compliment, because there's so many different kind of facets that you cover. It's all fantastic. Just want to say that.
Thanks,
and
man.
For the 3 we've got here along the dad thoughts topic. So these are 3 different tweets, and these are kind of just ranking in terms of either the ones maybe you like the most or just you felt the best about kind of typing out. So the first one we've got here is, the thing with the school drop-off line is you get to know cars, not people. Couldn't agree more. Life pre-kids, quote, how can someone go to work with food on their shirt, close quote. Life post-kids, quote, I get it. Definitely agree with that one. And the final one here, my kids are big enough to have large poops and little enough to forget to flush. That one is so true and hilarious.
that one's, I think that one's the keep. I think the trade, we'll go with the car drop off line maybe as the trade, and then the food on the clothing is the cut, because I deal with that far too often. And it's that is something though, that when you're so my workforce, we run the gamut between people for retirement and people being in those shoes, wondering like, how is that guy walking around with a banana piece on his shirt? And it's just, life happens.
Yeah, that's so funny. I mean, just looking through some of those and just kind of thinking about, I can try and put myself in the headspace of, before I was a dad, seeing of those and be like, know their cars. What do you mean? What, you just get to know the people? It's like, no, you got a routine. You drop them off. It's like, oh, yep, there's the red Suburban in front of me. Okay, yep, they're here. How did they beat me? Are you kidding me?
There's one SUV that has a so the license plate, it says the top says Beats, and then it says Bears, then it says Battlestar Galactica, like on the license plate holder. So if you're familiar with The Office, it's like that. I'm like, I would be friends with that person, I think, but I've never met them. I just know their car.
Yeah, I was gonna say you definitely get to know people a good amount. Yeah, with the bumper stickers, the license plates, just how well kept up the car is. You see a beater car rolling through, and it's like, I don't think that thing's gonna make it out of the parking lot. But
yeah.
Oh man. Well, so another one here, also related to one of your tweets, and I truly appreciated this one. So this one is Christmas in April, and this one is, as you referred to it, the holy trinity of Christmas movies. So, and two of these are my absolute favorites. So you have on here Elf, Home Alone, and Christmas Vacation. So it's the holy trinity. So that I'm assuming it's your top three. But how do you rank these three?
How do I rank those three? I think Elf is number one. Then I probably have to go Home Alone number two, and then Christmas Vacation number three. I think that there's a timelessness to Christmas Vacation. I don't know. Elf hits my generation. Elf is my generation. It's like I grew up with Home Alone, the Home Alone generation growing up, and so Kevin McAllister was about my same age when that movie came out. But Elf was like right in the sweet spot where I think I was in college or just about ready to be in college, and I listen to a lot of I like the rewatchables is I really enjoy that, the movie podcast from The Ringer and a lot of other things, and it talks about there was really a golden generation of comedies with a lot of what Will Ferrell did, and it was right when I was graduating high school through like right after I graduated college, and they don't make comedies like they did now. Like they've gotten a lot safer with a lot of things that they do, and R-rated comedy, and it's just one of those lives that the perfect coming kind of captures that. And then reminds me of being a kid, but
yeah, I mean, that is so incredibly true with Elf. It's kind of funny thinking of a couple of the comedies that Will Ferrell was in kind of around that time. And I mean, not to say that those ones are bad by any means. I love, I'm trying to think in terms of time wise. Old School, I'm a huge fan of. There's a couple of movies around there, but that Elf took on, it is a Christmas movie, but when I first saw it, I just thought it was going to be a great comedy. It's just a Will Ferrell movie, but with it being a Will Ferrell movie that is still, the kids can watch it, but it's also just a timeless, hilarious movie. I don't even know if they thought that it was going to become, the phenomenal movie that it really is. And I do have actually one question. So in terms of Home Alone, so grew up on those movies. Love them. I hated when they recast Kevin McAllister. I understand it for age purposes. So would you say Home Alone 1 or 2 is better? I'm assuming 1.
Yeah, I think 1 is probably better. 2, one just kind of captured a lot of things like that John Hughes feel with a lot of the different things, and then 2 was there were elements of 2 that it felt like it's nice to revisit. I would definitely watch Home Alone 2 during, like, I'll lock down. Like, once we get through Thanksgiving, like the Christmas tree goes up Thanksgiving weekend, and then I will watch a decent amount of Christmas movies during that time. Like, it's one of those that the football season is starting to wind down, and you kind of want to put your energy towards different areas, and I think it's a good time of year to have those Christmas movies. I had a new one this year. I don't know if did you ever catch Spirited? Did you watch that one?
I did not.
Oh, it's good. It's on Apple TV, so I definitely recommend that one. It's Will Ferrell again, and Ryan Reynolds are in that one. So it's a new entry into maybe not the Holy Trinity, but definitely will be one that I watch every year now.
Awesome. I was gonna say I do remember seeing the advertisements for that and I was thinking it was going to be good, and I feel like that would be a very good combo, those two. So I'll definitely have to go back and check that out. So the third one here, it's not quite a keep trade cut. It's kind of just a bonus one. I'm someone who loves movies and TV and that sort of thing. So my wife and I, what we did within the last year or so, we reclaimed our basement from our toddler. We moved into this house almost 2 years ago. He had it. It was a finished basement, but a bit dated. So we just said, do whatever you want, throw stuff at the walls, doesn't matter. We've now decided to take it back. So all of this stuff is in a different room now. We've got pool table, dartboard, all the fun stuff down there. And for decoration, my wife was thinking about, hey, we should do movie posters. We have just enough room for 7 of them. So I got 4 and she got 3. Would have been 4 and 4 in fairness, but I probably could have done 20 myself with the ideas I was throwing out there. Can't believe Mortal Kombat got vetoed. But the 4 that I had were Anchorman, Boondock Saints, Jaws, and Goldfinger. And the 3 that my wife had were a little different. Pretty Woman, Harry Potter, I think The Deathly Hallows, if I remember correctly, and Mean Girls. So if you yourself had 3 movies, any 3, and they weren't going to be vetoed, so they're going up on the wall, what would be your 3?
Empire Strikes Back from Star Wars
Mm.
would be one of the three. We're talking about that, and completely left. And that's a good nominee. Third one, I do like the Mean Girls call out. My wife and I saw Mean Girls live, so that's another one that kind of fell like right in that time frame. So I feel like I don't know. I'm really blanking, and I feel like it's like I can't. I'm seeing it in my mind, and I can't go there, and I'm really frustrated with myself right now. And it's just one of those. It doesn't make good content, and so I apologize for that. But I just completely lost it.
Well, and that's okay. If at any point in this episode, if you think of it, I want you to just blurt it out. I don't care what's happening, just blurt it out and we're good.
I'm thinking High Fidelity potentially would be an option.
Okay.
That's a go-to movie for me, and that's I'm thinking the John Cusack, just kind of the depressed middle-aged guy that I feel like is my spirit animal sometimes. But
I like that. Well, say trickling over into fatherhood, parenting, that sort of thing. So I believe it's 3 kids, if I'm correct, right?
3 kids, 3 girls.
Oh man. So wrapped around their fingers collectively.
Of course.
There
yes.
You go. Say so I've only got 1, but I've got some friends that have 2, have a third on the way, that sort of thing. So anyone that has more than 1 kid or 2 kids, I ask, how do you do it?
Organized chaos. I mean, it's one moment at a time. How old is your kid?
He is 4. He'll be 5 in November.
Okay. Yeah. So we're 7, 4, and 1, and so
Okay.
the 4-year-old, she'll be 5 in May. So kind of right in that zone. So the thing of it is that age they're starting to gain some decent independence. Like the 7-year-old's nice. She's going to be 8 in May. Like she's pretty independent now at this point. She can entertain herself pretty well and kind of watches out and helps out. And then once they start to get to that age, it helps a little bit. Whereas the 1-year-old is moving around and actively trying to kill herself with everything that she can possibly find. So that's one that the eyes always have to be on her, but she takes naps, and so you get a little bit of a break there. Whereas the other 2 are kind of out of the nap phase, and they do a good job entertaining each other. It's good to get one-on-one time with each of them as you can. And like I said, the oldest was able to manage some things herself, so you figure it out. It's one of those that I think it was dramatically harder to go from 1 to 2 than 2 to 3. I think that when you were at 1, you're able to trade off. You're able to have one-on-one time. You're able to have solo freedom time. When you went to 2, then that equation changed. Whereas either you were managing both of them at the same time, or you had one, or the other one had some freedom, the other parent without. But once you get that down and juggling 2 at the same time, then throwing 3 in the mix is just kind of like, if you're already juggling 2 balls and you throw another one in there, then kind of roll with it a little bit.
I would say that just gave me the visual. I'm now thinking, speaking of Will Ferrell characters, I'm thinking of D'Angelo Vickers doing his invisible juggling where he's gone. Oh, but anyway, that's a good point. I mean, that's pretty fair to think about. I know every kid is different in terms of, it's not like a lot of the same things that you use for one is going to 1-for-1 work on the second, let alone the third. But there's a good point in terms of, once you're learning to deal with more than 1 kid at a time, I could see that the, not the learning curve, I guess the level of change is, I guess, not quite as steep from 2 to 3. And I'm looking forward to the being helpful phase.
Yes,
not quite there, fine. But
it definitely helps. But they all come with their own benefits. They all come with their own challenges, and so that's the biggest thing. Like as they grow, as they get independence, then they start to fight you on a lot more things, and they have a lot more opinions about what they're going to wear and whatnot. And I'm pretty laid back in that regard. But there's those battles for freedom that come in that are always present. But no, it's great, and they're all at a really good ages, and it's really fun because of the spread that they're at. They're all in different things, and one is a big kid now and is in elementary school, and one is still kind of right in that sweet spot where there's a little bit of toddler still left, and then one is just entering that, and she's out of we're able to sleep at night. And that, as being a parent, once you can sleep at night, then you can handle anything. Like you've got it figured out at that point.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, sleep is king. Sleep might as well be currency at that point. So I definitely agree.
Yes.
So still kind of on the parenting topic there. So what would you say, I guess, one being the most challenging and two being the most rewarding thing about just parenting in general?
I think most challenging is how much of yourself you have to give up. How much, and it's one of those that you got to be on, because you can have a bad day at work, but you got to flip that switch when you're walking through that door, and you got to figure it out. You got to put things away as quickly as you can, compartmentalize and move on and enjoy. I think it can be hard. One thing that I know that I struggle with is just not so much. I've done a lot better at being present, being in the moment. I know we're all on Twitter, and that can take time away. And I think that over the last couple of months, I've finally clicked in my brain, and I've gotten better at that. But at the same time, like it's so much like as a parent, as a dad, and like a lot of what I'm very task driven and trying to like get them to do the next thing. And I need to do a better job of like, sometimes it's okay to be a kid, and sometimes you gotta take a step back and like, is this a big problem? Is this a little problem? Or are they? And I think that that's one of the things that I really struggle with on. It's one of those that like my wife is in child education, and so like she's got her master's in that. She's a teacher. She understands a little bit better with that. Whereas like I deal with adults every day, and like I don't work with kids other than my own kids, and so not being able to have those conversations like as an adult to your child, I think is one thing that I struggle with. Like, why would you do this? Like, why would a person do this? Like, what are you doing here? And I think that can be a real challenge. The rewarding thing is just them being there, I guess. Like like those those little moments that get a hug, or they're excited to see you when you come home. Just being able to share news with them. Those types of things are all. Christmas matters, I feel like, a lot more than we started talking about Christmas movies. But now as a parent, I feel like Christmas matters a lot more, because I think that as you grow, you kind of get older and you get to your being a college student or whatever, and you're kind of like, okay, well, I have to go to this thing, but like presents are still nice, but otherwise, but it resets that clock, and the magic really returns to Christmas. I think that that's one thing that's really nice, and that really carries through for different experiences. The first time that you go to an amusement park, or the first time, like this past summer the first time we rode a roller coaster, and so those types of things are all, it puts you back to remembering as a kid when you did those experiences those first times, and seeing it through the eyes of your kids, and having that reward there is really probably the best parts.
Yeah, I cannot wait for roller coasters. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Growing up, I was never really, I do have a fear of heights, but I remember the first, I guess, real roller coaster I went on was the Intimidator. Okay. And that was the last one we went on. I mean, I was grown enough to be like, I shouldn't be scared of this. I'm a grown man. But by the time I went on it, it was incredible. Loved the fear of it and everything. And I was like, well, after meeting my wife, I don't think I'm ever going to get her on a roller coaster in this lifetime. It's not going to happen. But I think my son is fearless enough to where he's going to make a beeline straight for the tallest, fastest. Ideally, we go upside down and hang their roller coaster. So very excited to go to Busch Gardens, wherever it is, and just kind of experience that. That is the funny thing too, like you're saying, with Christmas and with other things. We can appreciate it when we're younger, and then I guess it kind of fades away, kind of loses its luster over time. But it is kind of funny how it throws you right back into it, with your own kids, and saying you can see it on their face when they ask you that question. Something about Santa, something about the Tooth Fairy, something about where it's just like, it's not front of mind for you, but when they ask you with such wonderment, it's kind of incredible just to be like, all right, it's real. We got to build this back up. And then it's like, all right, got my brother-in-law who actually dresses for Santa every year. Pretty sweet costume. And we almost messed it up actually, because he forgot to change his voice one of the times, and he just started talking, and then my son looked up, he went, Tommy? And then he was like, oh, no. But just holding into that innocence as long as possible with Christmas and all that kind of stuff is definitely paramount, I would say.
So I did think I would definitely would have to have a Dark Knight movie poster. I'm thinking here the one with the Joker on it. I think I would have to go with that. The Dark Knight is one of my all-time favorite comic book movie, and it rivals to be one of my all-time favorite movies. So right now we're sitting with two. We've got Empire Strikes Back and we've got The Dark Knight, and I need to figure out the one.
That's a very good addition. I was going to say that is one I was thinking about doing, although somewhat ironically, I do have that as a T-shirt, which I don't know if it's kind of weird that I have that as a T-shirt, but it's a good one to work out, and it makes me feel cool, like with the Joker on there. So
We got all kinds of weird T-shirts. That's the life. Especially you get involved in fantasy football, you got all kinds of weird stuff.
yeah, whenever I'm wearing, if it's a Scott Fishbowl, if it's, I mean, obviously I have my own crudely made merch, but just that kind of stuff. Walking around, I'm wearing my football guy's hat, which I've had the number of times I've gone to the grocery store with this hat on, and they just like kind of look at me. They're like, "What's the smiley face for?" I don't know if they think it's like a cartoon thing or something. But I've actually had a sweet older lady ask me what it was about, and I was like, how am I going to explain fantasy football to this lady? So I tried to give a brief explanation.
She probably would kick your butt. She's probably firing off 55 underdog drafts and everything else. So
110. That's absolutely true. Oh man. Well, as you mentioned, you're you figure things out, with having 3 kids, and as you'd mentioned before, being a CPA, which even if, as you mentioned, maybe kind of more steady schedule now, it's still a fairly hectic one, I'm sure, especially this time of year. So how do you kind of trying to find balance in, work, family, content creation, writing and podcasting and that sort of thing? How do you kind of try to balance all that?
Balance is boundaries. That's what it's and it's very, very easy to allow areas of different sections of your life to bleed over into other areas of your life, and I certainly need to get better at it. But it balances boundaries, balances deciding that, what are you going to do at this time? Is it really family time? If it's family time, then don't be on Twitter, and disconnect and enjoy that family time. Is it time that you need to get this article knocked out? Well, communicate with the people around you that say, hey, I'm unavailable right now. I need to get this done. And I think it's important that as somebody that has a career that is not in the fantasy football industry, I think that this is a passion for us, but also we want to monetize it. We want to make it it's really a second job. If you're at this level, it's a second job, and you're working 2 jobs right now is the reality of it. And so setting those boundaries and knowing those times that you're going to tackle this, you're going to tackle that. I think that I think Twitter is Twitter's a fantastic tool, and it's really great for entertainment, and time just flies by, and it's great for networking. It's great for news information, but I think that it's also a time suck. And I think that people need to be realistic about that. And I know that that's something that I've struggled with, that I've gotten better about, but it's something that can take away a lot of my time. And I've been more cognizant about that, and worked on, if an article is taking particularly long for me to write, am I sneaking time on Twitter and realizing that, 5, 10, 15, 25 minutes goes by before you really realize it. And so balance is really boundaries. Balance is, you're always going to struggle, I think, is a lot of, I've listened to people that have been doing this for a long time, that have been in our shoes, where they have a career, they have the fantasy football things, and they have the fantasy. And that's really what it comes down to, is being intentional about your time and kind of driving towards that. And that's something that I think a lot of people that, it's really easy. I don't know. I go back to Twitter. It's really easy to get sucked down that rabbit hole, and something that Joe Bryan, my mentor, my boss, somebody that I look up to deeply. We were just talking about it this weekend, about how you feel like you need to be driven. You feel like you need to grow on Twitter, and you need to feel like you're doing all these things to achieve your goal. But the reality of it is that as much as it feels like a very big and oversaturated space, it's really a pretty small space, and people know each other pretty well. And so you don't need to be as connected to Twitter, I think, for that growth as what a lot of people feel. And once you kind of realize that and recognize that, and you're able to pull back, that helps, I think, with the balance, because that's something that seeps into all areas of your life. It can seep into, if you're not intentional about it, it can seep into that family time. It can seep into your work day. It can seep into when you're setting time aside to do content. And that's one thing that I'm still struggling with it, but I feel like I'm getting better with it, and certainly a lot better than what I was maybe a year or 2 years ago. But I think it is something that it's something that people need to let go a little bit.
Yeah, Twitter is another animal in and of itself. I mean, I was I had, like my own personal account on Twitter, but I had been off Twitter for, about a decade, and getting into, fantasy football content creation, that sort of thing. I begin to kind of realize, if I'm on Bleacher Report or somewhere and, seeing where news is really coming from, it's always something sourced from Twitter for the most part.
Yeah.
I was like, well, why don't I save myself, 3 minutes and just get it straight from the source? And certainly when I was trying to, promote this podcast, and if I was trying to get into writing and everything, I was like, well, if I'm on there, it seems like everybody that's relevant in fantasy is on there. And I remember the first day that I, created the account for the podcast and was just kind of, starting to add people that, that I was familiar with, that I follow, listen to their podcasts, read their articles. The amount of time that I wasted that first day of just being overwhelmed of just update. I'm like, I don't think I can follow anyone else yet. I'm not ready for that because there's no way I can digest what's happening right now. Because I would already independently be watching these people's podcasts and reading the articles, but then seeing that it's just the minute by second type of interaction, I was like, I don't even know where this is going to fit in with, family stuff, with work stuff, that sort of thing. So it's definitely something where, like you said, it is maybe not quite as saturated or not quite as big as it may seem in the fantasy content creation space. And Twitter is an incredible tool in the sense of, certainly getting to interact with those people that you otherwise would not be able to, because you're likely states away. Different coasts possibly. But it's, as we go through and, getting just to do a mock draft with somebody where it's like, oh my God, that's that person that has that huge podcast. I get to mock draft with these people right now.
Yeah.
Just such cool little things. And I've met some incredible people through Twitter in the fantasy space, and very thankful for that, and also very thankful for how nice everyone's been.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some bad eggs, but in all sincerity, I really haven't found them. Everybody's been so nice, so helpful.
That's awesome.
And yourself included, by the way.
Hey, man, I try, but no, and it is important. It's a very, very important tool, and especially as you're getting started out and to make those connections, it's a vital tool in the industry. And there's all this hand wringing about, well, it's gonna go away, whatever else. And I'm pretty skeptical that everybody's here already, and the people that have big followings, and they're not gonna want to start over and all of this. And so I'm not concerned about it going away, but I do. It's one of those that it's as you're struggling to find balance in different areas of your life, it is an area that can take a lot of time, and it's one that you don't necessarily always see the end result of it. If you unplug, you work hard, you have a good hard days at work, like you feel like you've accomplished something at the end of the day. You spend time with family, you strengthen those bonds, you feel good at the end of the day. You do an article, and that article is done, and you can walk away. But then it's like, Twitter's that thing that is always just growling at you, that feed the algorithm, give me more, and feel, am I getting more likes, am I getting more notifications? And it's one of those that it's like, it's just so funny to me, of like, it's like you're engagement farming. It's like, dude, if you only knew, like, I mute so many things, and like I don't even care if like anything gets a like. I'm just trying to have fun and meet people and be friends, and it's just so funny to me. And it's but it's sad too, because a lot of people that are really hung up on it and really and getting that immediate feedback of like, I'm not getting more followers or I'm not growing. Things I think are all things that are it's just disastrous to the mindset of what you're really trying to accomplish.
I completely agree. And that is the engagement farming thing is kind of funny, because then it's like, well, I am trying to engage with people, but I get what you mean, but ideally, like, if I'm asking about, valuation on like a player or a trade, or, maybe an idea on content of saying, hey, of these 3 types of content, maybe what do you like the most? And it's like, I would like you to engage with it, so then I have an answer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the double-edged sword, I suppose. But
well, it's like everything's engagement farming. It's an engagement platform. It's like it's like, do you want me to be worse at this? Is this the things that you're telling me you want me to be better at this? It's just kind of like, I don't know. It's just funny to me. And I think there's a lot of irony, especially as it steps into criticism. There's a lot of irony in a lot of different things. Like it's one of those that it's you subtweet something, like you're almost subtweeting yourself, and so it's like a never-ending cycle.
So, well, speaking of, so I can maybe pull at your heartstrings a little bit, your true team as Bills Mafia. What are your thoughts on the Bills' 2022 season?
I'm a beaten down Bills fan. So truth are to lose Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is basically what my thought is, because we traded Patrick Mahomes away, so I'm convinced that this franchise is just cursed to never beat Patrick Mahomes, and that's kind of where my true thoughts are. I do kind of feel like my true thoughts are the window was 2 years ago when they were up in Arrowhead with 13 seconds left, kicking the ball off in the and they would have been hosting the next game at home against the Bengals. I think that was their opportunity. I think that was really the lost Super Bowl. And I think this year you saw the performance against the Bengals and you saw what the Chiefs did to the Bengals. It's hard not to feel like the window is closed a little bit and the other teams are starting to separate a little bit, whereas the Bills are kind of the core is getting older and there's a lot of questions about where it's going to go. I think that they've had some draft misses that are really costing them now at this point. And so my true expectations are probably win the division, probably win a playoff game, and then probably lose to either the Bengals or the Chiefs.
Oh man. And kind of like what you're talking about with the core, I can't believe how old Stephon Diggs is at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like the trade for them to get him as the young up and coming, I mean, he was pretty established at that point, but the young up and coming piece, it seems like it was last year almost. But I know, I know he's aging. And I mean, in terms of that, the team as a whole kind of ascending. As a Panthers fan, it was tough to see McDermott leave, as I think he was one of the coordinators, and then I think a year before that, the Panthers had lost another coordinator. So it was among the multi-years of, all the coordinators just being siphoned away from the team. But when he got there, when they drafted Josh Allen, which I know there's some early rough patches, but, growth year over year. So I'm hoping certainly that, with the upcoming draft class, I don't know. I remember hearing rumblings about Diggs either requesting a trade or them considering trading him, but I kind of feel like he's there. Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
No, he's not going anywhere. It's interesting to see because if you're somebody that does a lot of mock drafts and you're digging into the draft, I think that there's a drop off around like picks 20 to 23 versus like the Bills having pick 27. And so I think you really do a lot of mock drafts. You really start to feel it like right around that 20th pick. Like it feels like there's a big difference between players that are landing there versus the 27th pick. And so we saw last year the Bills get aggressive and move up the first night of the draft to get Kaiir Elam. I'm curious if that would be something that they would consider. I saw today that they've had Jackson Smith and Jigba in for a top 30 visit. I think being aggressive and going and get him would be a nice compliment to the offense, given that's where he's going to excel. But it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, I guess you're kind of touching on it there a little bit, but what would you say is your ideal blueprint for the Bills, say for the remainder of this offseason? I guess certainly with the draft, receiver would be a big thing, but what are you thinking?
Only draft offense. I don't know. I'm at the point now where that's one of the things that I think is frustrating as a Bills fan is that you see that, well, the Chiefs did the swap out of the offensive tackles and they just signed Richie James and everything else. And you see the Bengals signing Orlando Brown. And then I think that the Bengals and the Chiefs have embraced the mindset of, well, we've got Patrick Mahomes and we've got Joe Burrow and we're just going to go, everything is going to be a firefight. We're going to, first one to 45 points wins the game. And I think that the Bills have more of an old school mindset of like, we're going to figure out how to stop those guys. And it's like, you're not going to figure out how to stop those guys. So go out there and score 45 points and beat them. And I think that you saw a little bit of atrophy, I believe, on the offense. I think the offensive line kind of fell apart as the season went on last year. We haven't had a very strong running game, even though statistically the team totals have ended up okay. Just haven't had that dominant piece in the run game. And then really, I think that what you saw last year was that they were expecting Gabe Davis to take a big step forward. That didn't happen so much. And then Stephon Diggs facing a lot of coverage. And I think that as the year wore on, he wore down a little bit. And I think the options have come out right now. And he's I think he wants more help Hopkins. That would be a nice piece to add in. If Bijan Robinson were to slide in the draft to a position, they could get aggressive and go there. But I think that when you dig into the team, I don't know if I believe that they would go skill position early, because I think that the loss of Tremaine Edmonds at middle linebacker, I think that will be something that will be addressed. I think they've really struggled in the interior defensive line, that they could go that direction. The safeties are getting older. And I think that I don't know. the way the mindset of the team is run, and I kind of expect that they'll target those positions versus a really fun fantasy draft, even though I do think that they could use a really fun fantasy draft to kind of close that gap with them and Kansas City and Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's the one thing, always trying to detach the two of like, all right, well, this would really help my dynasty team. I would love to get this young stud running back over on the team. I can watch my favorite team while also watching, Bijan play at the same time. That would be incredible. The Gabe Davis one, that was tough with, the slot. I know that's something that's been interchangeable with the Cole Beasley, the Jamison Crowder, Khalil Shakur, hopefully if he takes a step forward. But yeah, Gabe Davis, I mean, I feel like the playoff game, I guess it was 2 years ago now, his 50 plus fantasy point game. Then there was like, yeah, he's going to do that. It's like, he can do that. And he has those boom games, which again, I mean, are good for fantasy and best ball most specifically. But I mean, are good for the NFL team as a whole. But man, if they could get something like a JSN, someone just really work underneath in the short and intermediate, and then give Gabe Davis all that space to go deep, I think that could really unlock this offense to a better degree, and to better utilize Diggs, free him up a little bit. Dawson Knox, I don't know if he can ever reclaim his like an 8 touchdown year a couple years ago, but yeah, hoping for the best for the Bills, absolutely.
Yeah, Knox was I think he was a top 8 tight end in the second half of the season, but I have a theory that what happens the second half of the season doesn't matter nearly as much as the first half of the season, because I think people unplug from fantasy as their teams get bad. And I think that you see a lot of narratives that swirl about people get locked into what a player is the first half of the season. Then it doesn't matter if they turn it around the second half of the year. Everybody just thinks they're bad. And I think that you've seen it play out. Like Hollywood Brown is a notorious guy for that, where he'll have insane splits, where he had that 1 year in Baltimore. Everybody expected him to take off, and he was just nothing the first half of the year. And then he was excellent the second half of the year, but everybody was like, no, he's terrible. He's no good. And then it's like, now you're almost getting the opposite effect, where like he was very, very good to start the season, and then he really tailed off, but everybody's like, I'm all in on Hollywood Brown. Like, let's go. And it's just like, I think there's a lot of, the splits are interesting on some things.
Oh, love to follow the narrative. Absolutely. Well, say, Jeff, the final question I have for you. So, you being a content creator, so what would you say is the number one thing not to do? Something to recommend for an up-and-coming fantasy content creator out there?
Oh, Twitter tonight, being negative on Twitter. And it's just, I've heard other people talk, and I know friends of mine and everything, that if you got a decent sized following, you get a lot of interactions with people, and that mute button is really easy to hit. And so, you might be a new content creator, and I don't know, you might think you're funny, and somebody might take things the wrong way, or you're legitimately taking shots at people just because you've decided that somebody is something in your mind. And it's very easy to get muted and just kind of be forgotten about, unfortunately. And I think that would be positive in your interactions. I think it's if you really want to grow in the space and really want to take steps forward, be who you say you are, put your name and your face out there, and allow people to get to know you, I think is very, very important. I think it's hard to be anonymous and grow and be a content creator. I think that it's there's some people that have been grandfathered into that situation, I think, that kind of still maintain some level of that. And I know that people have different professional jobs, and that it requires them to be in different areas and different levels of notoriety on social media. And so that's something that people can weigh. But just be who you say you are, and allow people to get to know you and have positive interactions. And I think a lot of people, as much as it's interesting, because I do think that there's might be some generational gaps on Twitter, and like a lot of what I grew up with of like the Sports Center and like good conversation is a lot different than like the debate culture that I think is a lot right now. And it's like I'm somebody that I've been around the internet long enough to know that where debates go on the internet, and especially on Twitter, and they don't usually end well. And so I just don't start with it usually. And so if that's going to be your personality, if that's what you see in media, and that's what you want to do with it, take what's going to come with it. But I'm telling you, I've listened to some way smarter people, way more experienced people than me, and learned a lot of lessons in that regard. And really just be respectful and be positive in your interactions.
Yeah, life and Twitter is not necessarily just one long episode of First Take. That's for sure. Feeling like people need to get that point across, get that dunk, if you will. Which I guess it feels good for people to do it in the moment. I don't know. It's kind of one of those where, the victory laps and that sort of thing. Like, it can feel good to have the moment of like, see, 4 months ago I told you this guy was going to hit, and I knew it. And obviously ignoring the 8 other people that you said, yeah, they're going to hit, future Hall of Famers, and then they're out of the league in 2 years. Right. But at the end of the day, we're all just people who love fantasy football or various, Devy, Dynasty, various pieces of it, and just like to talk about it. So if you want to interact, then please do that. If not, then that's entirely okay. I know plenty of people. I even have, some friends that, kind of unplug, when it's the actual off season, and, kind of plug back in, kind of just like, will talk to me about different things. And in my head, they'll ask a question. I'm just like, wow, I haven't even thought about that, because it'll be so much off-season stuff I'm so heavily focused on. And it's like, I forget that some people actually don't tune into any of the information for like months out of the year. And I'm just kind of deep in it the whole amount of time. And they kind of pop back in and they're just like, ask a couple of questions. I'm like, oh yeah, they're on this team, or this is what's going on. This coach, there's this salary cap issue. So it's just, it's a lot.
And I do, you touched on an interesting thing from the content creation side just there, because I think that really, when you look at Twitter as a tool and Twitter as social media and growth within the industry, I think you can really split it into 2 different areas. And what I've seen for being involved in a couple of years in this, when you get into the season, a lot of the industry people are interacting with like the so-called fans, their followers, those that are, it's a lot more of a business-based mindset of like, I'm catering to my audience. I know my audience is plugged in, and you don't get a lot of that creator to creator interaction, I think, during the season as much as now. I think it's a great opportunity right now that if you get those creative juices flowing, come up with new ideas, come up with new articles, come up with new content ideas, and network your butt off if you want to grow right now, because now is the time of year where the people that are plugged in the industry, they're less concerned about catering to their specific audience and more trying to make up ground and networking and looking to fill roles within their company and do those types of things at this time of year. And so if you're somebody that is in the fantasy industry and you would like to grow and you're looking to get to a bigger site, those types of things, write interesting articles right now, explore different ideas, talk about things that aren't being talked about. But again, network very hard.
I could not agree more, Jeff. I sincerely appreciate all those notes. And rounding it out here, so the guest always gets the final word. This could be a shout out, this could be a quote, this could be a cheers, one that has, I don't think, ever been used, an insult, if you want to throw it that way. But we don't interact on Twitter that way, so I don't know if you want to use it. But final word, Jeff, go for it.
Well, first off, my third movie, Fight Club. I had a Fight Club poster in my college dorm, and that just clicked in. So I've got 3 movie posters to you, actually, Chew. And just thank you so much for reaching out. And you are come across you, and I've enjoyed our interactions, and I really appreciate you taking your time tonight to share this time with me and be able to chat and be able to learn different things and discuss different things. I think there are a lot of crossovers in between us, and that's great to see. Somebody that is very career driven, family oriented, and also trying to do this as really a second job and grow in the space as well. And so I just thank you again so much, and I really appreciate you. And if you're listening to this show, you better be following at Father Dynasty and consuming all of his content and doing all those great things. But again, thank you so much for this time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. You have a good one.
You're welcome. Thank you.